The Special Committee on Public Policy will come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Okay. Chairman Cups,
Present.
Vice Chair Bailey, Representatives Sharp, Baker, Chipman, Ellerbott, Kelly.
We do have a quorum. For all the guests that are with us today, every one of the members that is currently absent has talked to me. They all have other committees that they are either executing or presenting in. So we do understand that. We're trying to accommodate with everyone's schedule. We do have a quorum, and so we are going to start an executive session with that. The Committee on Public Policy will now go into executive session, and I move that Bill 2013 be voted to pass. Is there any discussion? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment ending in .01H, and I would like to move for its adoption.
Representative Kelly has an amendment ending in .01H. She has moved for its adoption. All those in favor say aye. Oh,
any discussion? Sorry.
Excuse me. Let me back up. Is there any discussion on this amendment? Representative Kelly, do you care to just give us a...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would love to very quickly. This is just clarifying that we are not going to require emergency shelters to fall under the qualified residential treatment. The QRTPs that we discussed here in this bill, and what the whole reason for the Families First conversation is, right? It's about, Families First conversation is about residential care facilities that are long-term. We don't want to unduly harm our emergency shelters. We want to make sure that we are protecting all of our state's care kiddos and make sure that we want to make sure that we don't get funding messed up because of ill-placed wording in a bill, in summary.
Perfect. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Representative Kelly has moved for the adoption of House Amendment 1. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes definitely have it. We have we've adopted the amendment. I hate these scripts, by the way. We have adopted the amendment, and I move we roll the amendment into a new substitute and adopt the substitute. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. You have adopted the substitute. I now move that House Committee substitute for Bill number 2013 be voted do pass. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, will you please call the...
Chairman Cups,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bailey, Representative Sharp, Baker, Chipman, Ellerbott, yes. Kelly. You have 4 ayes and no noes. 4
With your vote of 4 ayes and no noes, the bill passes. I now move that House Bill 2327 be voted do pass. Is there any discussion? Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I am being reminded that I'm misspeaking and I need to wait for your substitute.
I'll let you go here in just a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do have a substitute. It has been distributed, and I move for its adoption. Now, Representative Kelly, do you have some discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For the committee's edification, what this substitute is basically a work product result of vested parties on this conversation of making sure that kids in state's care get the education that they need and that their special needs do not get in the way of getting the education that they deserve. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, we are specifying in this substitute that the special school district's funding is not impacted And we're also clarifying that this bill is specifically for children in the custody of the state that are in these residential care centers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Once again, the ayes clearly have it. You have adopted the substitute. I now move that the House Committee substitute for House Bill 2327 be voted do pass. Is there any discussion on this? Oh, excuse me, 2376. I do apologize. I had that written down incorrectly. I now move that the House Committee substitute for House Bill 2376 be voted do pass. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Cups?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bailey? Representatives Sharp? Baker? Chipman? Ellerbott? Yes. Kelly? You have 4 ayes and no noes.
By your vote of 4-0, you have also passed House Bill 2376. That concludes executive session. Thank you very much. We're now going to move back into regular session. We're going to start our hearing today with a bill by Representative Hudson. He has, I believe, to present in another committee as well right after this, so we're going to let him kick it off. Representative Hudson, you can proceed as you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate you being flexible with me here, as I do have to make a presentation in another committee. So thank you for hearing me first. For the record, State Representative Brad Hudson, District 138, here to present House Bill 2694. I come to you today as a state representative, obviously. I'm also a former county assessor, and I'm a taxpayer. And we have an issue that is getting ready to come up, really, that assessors are facing right now with regard to personal property values. Assessors are tasked in statute with using the National Automobile Dealers Association price guide to value personal property, which would include things such as cars and trucks, that sort of thing. The NADA guide is showing a price increase on some of our vehicles. And as a matter of fact, in some cases, that price increase can be very significant. What my bill would do would be to tell assessors to use, basically it would be the lowest true value, and they would have the option of going back, either using the current NADA guide that's available or using one from the 2 previous years. So for example, if you have a vehicle, a truck that's got more miles on it, it's a year older, and the assessor's looking at that, and it shows that the value of that thing's going to go up a certain percentage, the assessor would be allowed to freeze that value or use the lowest value looking at the previous 2 years. So why is this an issue? I mean, assessors also deal with real estate, and real estate goes up and down. Well, there are a couple of things that I think show that we need to deal with this. One, as an assessor, I do not like and wouldn't want to have that conversation with the taxpayer when you're sitting across the table from them and you're telling them that their personal property tax bill may have went up hundreds of dollars when they didn't buy a new vehicle. You're telling them that their vehicle that has more miles on it and is a year older is actually worth more. Should this happen, this is going to create a significant problem. We're going to have a lot of folks that are not going to be happy with this, understandably so. Also, with real estate, when you have an increase in assessment because you're required to reassess properties, real estate properties every couple of years, that can, if the Hancock Amendment allows for there not to be a windfall for certain taxing jurisdictions. So they can roll that back and the tax levy can be adjusted accordingly if the real estate increase is significant enough. We don't have that in personal property. A personal property is not something that is to be rolled back, so you're talking about an issue where these folks just could just end up paying more money on an older vehicle. That is basically, in a nutshell, what we're trying to take care of here, and I would be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Good stuff.
Thank you,
There-
Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions from the committee for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, thank you, Representative. We're now going to take testimony. We will alternate. I'm going to do that all day today. So we will start with witnesses in favor of the bill. Not everyone all at once.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm David Wood. I am the policy analyst and liaison for the State Tax Commission. I apologize for the confusion there. I'm here to discuss House Bill 2694 briefly with you. The Tax Commission was presented with an issue earlier in January. And it had been discussed a little bit before, but formally, the process began in January, where the assessors showed some concern with the increased values on the vehicles and how this was going to affect the property taxes, and they brought the concern to the Tax Commission. With that, they went and checked, okay, normally with increases in property taxes, you depend on the rollbacks from the Hancock Amendment. Well, there is a statute that treats personal property increases as new construction, which means that is not calculated into any rollback for any of the taxing entities. So as Representative Hudson indicated, this will be an increase, excuse me, in the taxes assessed on those individuals with vehicles. So then the Tax Commission decided that we needed to at least look at how we would address this. So the Chief Counsel and myself presented several options and had long discussions with the Tax Commission. And what you see before you now is somewhat a group process between several individuals and conversations that was had, and the Tax Commission has approved the language that's there. Now, that does not mean that that is the only solution the Tax Commission is willing to accept. We realize that this was done in a very short time frame. We know that there is issues with the assessors having to have this completed by June 15th when they turn over their tax books. So it's essential that we have the process moving as quickly as possible. So we filed this legislation, but Representative Hudson has filed this legislation. But by no means are we saying that this is the end-all be-all, and we welcome suggestions on how to make it better. The increase in car values, right now they are fixed in statute to be the NADA values from October of the preceding year is how you determine that value, and there's no leeway in that. So if it's a vehicle that's listed in that book, the assessors must use that value. Now, there have been news reports coming out. In fact, there was one 2 days ago on the local news that said vehicle prices have increased 40%. You can find online where vehicles have increased in approximately that same number, 36, 37% over the last year. That is the selling price. Now, I will admit that the values that are used by the assessors is an average trade-in value, which will be less, and their increase will be a little less than the 30 to 40%. But it's still going to be an increase to the taxpayers. If you look at how much money is collected in taxes on vehicles alone, if you had a 10% increase, just taking a very low number, it would amount to about $100 million. 15% increase is $165 million increase in collected taxes statewide. So this is a significant number, and the commission felt that it was necessary to at least give the legislature the opportunity to address the situation. Obviously, if the bill doesn't move and the statutes stay the same, the values stay the same, the taxes will be collected. If the legislature sees this as an issue and they follow some form of what's presented, taxpayers will save. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be some issues with the assessors and the timeline of all of this, because when we change the values to be the lowest over the 3 years, that does a couple of things. Right now, the assessors are collecting their information that's filled out on your forms. They have to be turned in by March 1st. Then there's a time that they can still accept them through April 15th. Then they have to assign the values, and all of that has to be turned in by June. So there will be an emergency clause on this bill, because if you wait till August 28th, you're actually way past what those values are calculated. There's going to be assessors who are loading those values early that may have to go back and do some recalculation or re-evaluation with this, the way the bill is worded now. Those are things we're willing to address and see if there's other solutions that would fit the timeline better. So hopefully the assessors can give us that information as quickly as possible so we can make those adjustments to the bill. We also started having the discussion, if vehicles are going up, you drive by the car lots, there's still no vehicles sitting there now. I heard a news report this morning that the projected chip shortage is going to extend into the end of this year. So that's the reason for the 2 years instead of just a 1-year delay. Because if you go back to 2019 and 2020, those values then would give us 2 years to see a correction in the market. We also have driven by the farm lots. So tractors, implements, they're all in shortage as well. There's boat shows that are being canceled because there's not enough inventory for them to actually have the boat shows. So we added language towards the end of the paragraph that would include recreational vehicles and farm equipment, to say that the assessors had the ability to go back 2 years and take the lowest value on those as well. Now, they are not fixed to a specific pricing guide with those. Only the vehicles that are listed in the NADA book are required to use those numbers. Otherwise, they are to use a current value that they can find somewhere else to price those items. And those other sources are going to show the same increases like NADA will as well. So we want to give them the option on all of those types of vehicles. There are some exclusions listed there, and that is for the centrally assessed or original assessment properties, which is your utility companies, where they have computers. They have a telecom may have a TV box that's treated as personal property. We don't want to affect any values on those because there's not a book for them either. But the trucks and the vehicles that's listed there, those are assessed locally and would fit into this bill. The intent of all of this is to give the option to the legislature to address an issue that was brought before the State Tax Commission. We provided language. We do not believe that it is the end-all be-all, and we would be welcome to having any type of amendments that would improve it or improve the functionality of this. So hopefully those will come quickly, but we also see the necessity for this to be in place as quickly as possible. With that, I would be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee for this witness? I actually have one, and just for some clarification, and this may be a question that the bill sponsor could help answer. I understand that if someone were to purchase a vehicle and then they were to turn that in on their assessment sheet, that this valuation takes place. Can you, for the edification of the committee, explain after it's already been on the assessment sheet and the following year, is that something that is reassessed annually and that value reassessed, or once that has been purchased, the valuation established, and then subsequent years is that reassessed?
Real property is assessed every other year in the odd-numbered years. Personal property is assessed every year.
Every year.
If it is a new vehicle that would not be listed in the NADA guide, assessors have a little bit of leeway, and several of them handle it different ways. The conversation in the last couple of days, several of them have used 85% of sticker value
85%?
of what the sticker value is.
Right.
And then once the book value comes out, they're required by statute to use that amount.
Required by statute too?
Yes.
Okay. In a conversation I had with some constituents about this exact issue, and we were talking about everything from farm equipment to recreational vehicles. There was discussion as to, potential options for it. I'm just going to use an example. Say that I purchased a Ford pickup, that's what I have, and turned it in on my assessment sheet, and it was valued at $20,000, and then now Blue Book value shows that it's worth $30,000. If that's already on my assessment sheet as $20,000, if there was, I guess, potential appetite to make it where those vehicle prices wouldn't increase. And I didn't know if that was something that was discussed by the commission.
Essentially, that's what the going 2 years back with the lowest value would accomplish. So if there is an increase that would last more than the 2 years, then there would be an increase under this legislation. But this would go back. So if you were assessed at $20,000 last year, you're assessed this year at $30,000, it would go back to the $20,000. But right now, under current statute, you're going to be assessed on the value that is valid in October of the previous year.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just didn't know if that was something that had been discussed by the commission. Seemingly that's been discussed by the public, by some assessors, just a caveat that made it where it can't go up, a vehicle value can't go up from what it was assessed as the previous year if it was already on the assessment sheet. Does that make sense? And
Yes.
I just didn't know if that was something that was entertained, discussed, or even if that would be feasible. But
And there are special situations every year that, you may have a vehicle. The example was given earlier this morning to me. When gas prices went up, then small vehicles values shot up because everybody was looking to buy one. Then after the gas shortage somewhat ended, then the bigger vehicles got the attention. So it does happen occasionally in some small groups that cars will appreciate a little bit. But we've never seen it happen like it is right now with the shortage in vehicles. There's also the rental companies are not releasing their cars because they can't get new vehicles to replace them. So the used car market is just never been seen before. So hopefully we would never ever see this again. Under a general rule, which is kind of dangerous to follow, but cars depreciate, trucks depreciate. So your values year to year typically go down. There are some issues, like the gas shortage or things that can affect it, but nothing has affected as many vehicles and as much as the situation we're in right now.
thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone in opposition to this bill? Seeing no one, we'll now go back to testimony in favor. Seeing none, is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Great. That will conclude the hearing on Representative Hudson's bill. We thank you for bringing that to us today. I know that we had pretty quick notice on that, so thank you for freeing up time in your schedule to bring that. We're now going to move. Representative McDaniel has a couple bills to present to us, and I'm going to let him pick which order he'd like to bring those before the committee this morning, or this afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start with House Bill 2453 for the committee. For the record, Representative Andrew McDaniel, representing District 150 in Pemiscot and Dunklin County. House Bill 2453, if you'll just flip to the back page. Usually, I was basically, in essence, just trying to make a memorial highway sign for this young 9-year-old child that had passed away in the tornado in my area. Well, trying to make the sign, drafting told me I couldn't just draft that section for this child because of the following lines in the first pages need to be struck for me to do so. So that's why all this stuff struck. I think there's an easier way maybe to do that without creating a problem for the department when if you read all the back pages of the fiscal analysis and such. There's probably, I talked to Representative Edelbrock, and there's probably something else we can do as well so we can get this child her sign, because I'm doing it both ways. I'm doing it bill form, and pretty soon I'll have the hunter signature form in, the check in as well, and doing it that avenue as well. So I'm doing it both ways to make sure this little child can get the sign up in our area, and I'll entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions of the committee for please proceed.
Representative McDaniel, I appreciate what you're trying to do for your constituents and their family, and their families. I know lots of people in this building have memorial highways that they want to name after folks that have made a significant impact on their community or that mean quite a bit to them. So I'm in support of your bill. I am curious to know, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, maybe for the edification of the rest of the committee too, because we did speak about this before. What are some ideas about how to get this done?
Well, like, I think maybe instead of removing all this, we add in an exception either for like a state representative can do it, because like the other process is the petition process.
Sure.
And then they have to be like a fireman or a veteran or law enforcement, and they have to be dead within 2 years.
Right, they have to be deceased for 2 years, and they have to meet the qualifications of being like a first responder or for the memorial highway.
Stuff.
And because she doesn't meet those standards, and she hasn't been unfortunately deceased for, well, I guess but it hasn't happened since 2 years on, and so now we have to either change this law, or you have to go through her family has to go through the routine of getting all the signatures and then paying the costs of all this stuff.
But even in that process, like I was telling you earlier, we've got that. They're actually going to mail the next day and all that stuff up to me, so that stuff's ready.
Right.
But even though that stuff would have to be presented to the MoDOT commission, like under existing law still, that check would be sent back and they wouldn't get the sign still under existing law.
Sure. Well, let us know how we can help, and if you're open to amendments and stuff, I want to help. I want to work with you on this.
Offline, I'll tell you in like whatever you wanted to do with your guys, add his memorial thing to it, and you're the lawyer, you know what the right wording is supposed to be.
Easy.
So, I mean, I give credit where credit's due. And however you can fix it, I'm glad. I trust you. I trust the committee, Howard, to do it right, and to get it moved forward. I will have to do it because on the paper-wise, they want it in a different section in my county, like on the back where it's the section. I need to change that. I'll get an amendment or let you know the location so you can just do one big amendment.
Sure.
If that's cool with the committee.
Like a committee sub.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the inquiry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the committee for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, we will take testimony. Before we allow Representative McDaniel to present his next, I misspoke. I said bill. I guess it is a HGR. But is there anyone here who would like to testify in favor of the bill? Anyone in opposition? For informational purposes only. Seeing none, that will conclude the hearing on House Bill 2453. Representative McDaniel, I think we're now ready for your HGR.
Thank you, sir. Again, Representative Andrew McDaniel for the record. House Joint Resolution 119. I was asked by a constituent to help veterans out with their property taxes. And I know eliminating property taxes is a big discussion when it comes to assessors and schools and all that. So I went with, I know Illinois' law on how they do it for their disabled veterans. And I believe this committee also has some other ones that are coming forward with different avenues of how to help out disabled veterans, tier-wise, and mine's a tier section. It goes from 100% to 70%, that the value of all assessed property is exempt from taxation. Then you have 50% to 69%, it's up to $5,000, and 30% to 49% is up to $2,500. And in essence, that's what I'm trying to do is give them some property tax relief. That's the goal of this, and I would entertain amendments, however anybody would want to move this forward, join it with another one, change it up, however, just to help out our veterans. And I'll entertain any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. I do appreciate your flexibility. Are there any questions from the committee for the Representative McDaniel? Seeing none, we will now start with testimony in favor of HGR 119. Is there anyone here to testify in favor? Is there anyone here to testify in opposition? For informational purposes only. Seeing none, that will conclude the hearing on HGR 119. Representative McDaniel, thank you for bringing both those before us here this afternoon. Representative Bailey was cracking up as she came in. It feels like we're about a mile and a half away from everyone.
Just
in the
assume you all
room.
didn't shower today, and so we were taking, precautions. I'm all for it.
It kind of does give it an awkward feel, but we're making the best of it. So we actually now are going to move to Representative Veit's bill, House Bill 1550. Representative Veit, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, and thank you for your time in hearing this bill today. House Bill 1550 came into being in that times have changed, needs of daycare have changed. When we had a pandemic, there were a lot of children out of school. We now have school districts that have different semesters, and the previous bill only allowed for summer camps during May through September. We realized there were a lot of other needs that the WIC and other organizations could furnish by having, when we have children out of school because of COVID, parents have to work, they have nowhere to go. And this is an effort by, there's various organizations who will testify today for them stepping up to do that need. So the language basically establishes day camps, which will be for children over 5 years of age in kindergarten and above, and they will not be for overnight stays, which is different summer camps. But we had to do that so that we wouldn't not get into licensing requirements, and also we did not want people to try to take advantage of our new law that they could run their own nurseries and whatever and try to escape the licensing requirements. We also had put a provision in here that basically these are not licensed. You need to tell people they're not licensed, and that's not a real burden, but I remember from the last legislation I did, people coming in and saying, well, we didn't even know they weren't licensed. We want to be upfront about it. These are not licensed, but they are not they're children there for short time periods, and these are mainly for recreational purposes. I mean, providing recreation and a place for families to take their children. I mean, we've seen it in last COVID when schools were shut down, and even now we have schools that have tri-semesters, and they have different breaks in there, and we need daycare available for them, and this is just another step in that direction. And I also will tell you that I have a substitute, House Committee substitute, which I passed around to everyone yesterday and today, and it has some of the changes that we have put in there, and that is, again, clarifying the language. We've had a lot of input from different entities, and I will let them all step forward and explain their role in this, but it was just that we wanted to make sure that the YMA activities were not jeopardized, that the various health or other facilities were not jeopardized, and so with that, I will take questions.
Representative Kelly, you're recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, I just want to thank you. You have been so conscientious on these important subjects. And if I might continue a conversation that you and I have had offline, just for the edification of anybody listening, we discussed hypothetically like a summer camp.
Yes.
And just, is my understanding correct that as long as the camp isn't continuous for over 30 days, did I understand
We
that
left
right?
those provisions in, and that's why we
Yes.
changed it out. So we did not want to infringe upon what existed.
Yes.
But we wanted to have additional daycare camps in there, but we did not want people using that as a way to get around license requirements for child care facilities where you're full-time babysitters and things of that nature.
But like if I operate a summer camp and parents, of course, voluntarily say, okay, I want my children to come to that summer camp, and that camp runs for a week at a time, this doesn't put any undue burden on
That
that
is not the
camp.
intent of this bill, and we specifically left that language in there the way it was, because that was our first thing was, well, let's just change a few things, and then realized that there were collateral consequences, and so it was to keep the bill basically as is, but make additional provisions so we can adjust it and address the issues of different organizations providing care when your children are out of school and you have a job to do.
I really appreciate the work you've done on this bill, gentlemen.
Thank you, Representative Kelly. Are there further questions from the committee for the sponsor? Seeing none, we will move on to testimony. We're going to start with those in favor of said proposed legislation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Gary Gates, I'm the Executive Director for the Missouri Park and Recreation Association. And here with me today is our current president, Phil Stiles, who works with Jeff City Parks and Recreation here in town. On behalf of the 2,000 members of the Missouri Park and Recreation Association, we wish to go on record to testify in support of this bill. This act would allow, among a variety of service agencies, parks and recreation departments to expand their offerings of recreational day camps. Currently, those services are limited to the summer months, and as they're defined as summer camps. This would allow departments to offer those same programs year-round, so long as the local school system's not in session. So my example would be, this is the same day camp that you would send your child to during the summer, but it may occur over a winter break or a spring break, and it's the exact same services. Why are we required to be accredited in December when we're not in June? So the process of accreditation can be rather lengthy. These recreational summer day camps aren't necessarily in line with the reasoning for accreditation. There's a difference between day camp and day care. So, you know, there's some crossover there that doesn't necessarily require day camps to go through that accreditation process, and that's why there is the current exemption. This act does not prevent any agencies that want to pursue accreditation to go forward and do that. So if they want to get accredited, nor does it exempt even a Parks and Recreation day camp that is required by a funding source, say if they're an SAC grant or a CLCC grant that requires accreditation, it does not exempt them from that. So with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions that the committee may have.
I actually have a couple just for clarification. It was mentioned that these camps will not have to be licensed. And, you know, before we got the substitute, the original language that I got was very, very simple. It just changed the term summer camp to day camp. And I understand we had to have some other fixes because of that. But the reality is, are there any what you would classify as summer camps, day camp? Let's start with summer camps that do have to be currently regulated. Is there a different process for it, say, if someone does stay overnight?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with that because I am not aware of a program that one of my members offers that is overnight. So
okay.
I'm not able to answer that one. I'm sorry.
That may be something I have to do a little research on myself. I know in my area, there's some camps
Absolutely. And
on,
there
yeah,
could be private run camps or,
Yeah.
or even religious-based camps that are overnight. But
okay,
I'm on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department said I would venture to say 95% or more offer that Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. drop off, 5 p.m. pickup. That's the kind of camp.
day
that we're looking
camp format,
with,
yeah.
with recreational in nature.
Okay, and those particular camps, the lion's share, other than the accreditation process you were discussing, that is the same process that you would have to go through for like a daycare. There's not a licensing requirement, correct?
They're very similar to the daycare, and there's certain things in the facility that have to be there. There's certain percentages of toys that meet the different age groups that are being accommodated. So that accreditation process can be pretty difficult to navigate, especially if you have a facility that's not designed for those under the age of 5. So
Okay, and
I may not have answered your
no,
question. I may
in the
not have answered.
past, if it was in the summer, you didn't have to have that, but if it wasn't in the summer, you did, like, correct?
To become accredited, yes.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Are there any other questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
We'll now move to anyone that would be in opposition. Seeing no one, we'll move back to those in favor.
Good afternoon. My name is Gabe Huffington. I'm the Assistant Director of the Parks and Recreation Department in Columbia, Missouri. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill number 1550. From the beginning of the pandemic through the different waves of the variants that we have had, our department has been asked to look at different capabilities to provide child care through day camp programming to our families of essential staff within the city of Columbia, and then also with families that are throughout Columbia and Boone County. Under the current structure of the law, we are not allowed to offer programming during the school year, as day camp programs do not have the necessary accreditation excuse me, to operate outside of the months of May through September. We started to research this process of becoming an accredited facility, and that process was going to take too long in order to meet the needs of our citizens and our staff members due to the COVID pandemic. And also, it would be difficult due to the amount of resources that it would take to change some of these facilities to be able to have those different types of programs within the facility, and then also the monetary resources necessary. The accreditation program also expanded the offerings beyond what we needed to do in terms of our use. The Columbia Parks and Recreation Department, we receive continuous requests to host a variety of different day camps during days when schools are not in session. So this would include one-day camp sessions, camps over winter breaks, camps during spring break, for instance. We're fortunate to have the indoor facilities to be able to handle these types of camps. We are also fortunate to have the Parks and Trail system to be able to offer those outdoor recreation activities for those camp attendees. I would encourage each of you to consider supporting this bill, as it has a direct impact to working families within our own city, within Boone County, and also the state of Missouri. When we looked at how we can expand opportunities for affordable childcare for these families, we also want to look at how we can provide a safe, healthy environment for those campers that attend those Parks and Recreation day camps. So by expanding this to 12 months, that allows us to utilize our facilities to be able to offer these types of camps to these attendees outside of those normal school hours, and we're able to meet those needs of our citizens. I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Are there any questions from the committee for this witness? Representative Elbrock, you're recognized to inquire.
Hi, thanks for being here.
No problem.
As I'm reading through this, like different thoughts come into my mind. You're somebody that probably knows the answer to this. The way it's defined on the, now I'm working off the committee sub that we've been given.
Okay.
But the words I'm reading, this is, by the way, friendly inquiry. No, I'm not
No
trying
problem.
to come at you or anything. I just want, for my own sake, with the clarification, it says organizations that operated between the hours of 6 a.m. and 7 p.m., and then you drop down a couple more lines. It says, when school is not in session, with the primary function of providing a recreational program for children 5 years of age or older. So are we also including in this expansion the ability for your facilities and facilities like yours to offer sort of latchkey programs from, say, because school's no longer in session after 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And if you're operating from 4 o'clock to 7 p.m., you're within those hours. Does that include after-school programs and things like that, that you could do half-day camp ideas, or?
As long as it's within the parameters of those hours, yes, it would be. So we would be able to offer those. We do have some after-school camps right now, but the biggest part of this and why this bill in terms of a change is that the all-day camp that right now, so for instance, when we have in Columbia, we just experienced a shutdown of our school system for an additional 3 days that no one expected for those families.
Sure.
We would be able to have a program in place that would allow those parents to sign up and bring those kids there. So whether they're Columbia citizens or Ashland, Harrisville, Hallsville, we would kind of be able to bring together a very quick camp to serve that need. When we were talking to another representative about this, the other aspect that comes up for this type of camp are school systems that are going to that 4-day school schedule.
Okay.
So schools that are not going to be in session on Friday anymore, there are parents that have both family members that are working. We'll be able to provide that camp for them on those Fridays and to provide that childcare for them.
Friday
Whereas many daycare facilities and those types of establishments are full of students, we would be able to start to pick up those Fridays or those Mondays as well.
Sure. So I guess second question, follow-up. A lot of places back where I'm from were doing school like remotely. They were sending kids home and having them do school on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
Does that qualify for school being in session under these definitions, or is that something different?
I would not be able to answer that question.
Okay. Thank you for the inquiry.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. I did forget to mention, if you haven't filled out a witness form and you presented today, you need to fill out a witness form. If you filled it out online, that's fine, but if you didn't, witness form. We didn't have anyone in opposition. Do we have anyone else here in support?
Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Schultz. I'm the Director of Policy and Partnerships for Missouri State Alliance of YMCAs. More importantly, I brought the experts. So I have all of their forms here, but we aren't all going to testify, just in support here. Jeffrey Snyder from the Osage Prairie YMCA, Chad Watson from Mountain Grove, Seymour, Willow Springs, Zach Guller with our Armed Services YMCA, Catherine Custer, Springfield's YMCAs, Cassville, Monette area, Dallas County, Lebanon, Roy Blunt, YMCA of Bolivar, and I am just doing the introductions. This is Erin Shaw, COO of the Ozarks Regional YMCA. So I'll let her go ahead and testify, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So we are testifying in support of this as well, because we're in the same situation where we offer summer programming, and we can. And then when we have school in Springfield, we've just seen SPS close down for 5 days. And we were able to offer essential care during COVID because we were able to pull an emergency license. And so that did take a lot of time. That did take a lot of energy. In Springfield, we have 2 Ys. Our downtown Y, however, was not license compatible because of sprinkler systems and things such as smoke detectors that are connected to alarm systems. That facility, if you've ever been, it's a little over 100 years old. And so to try to get that emergency license was not going to work, but we were able to pay some cost and get our Pat Jones facility ready to go for essential care. And so under the emergency license, we were able to continue to provide care, but those emergency waivers are no longer. And so as we're in our after-school programs, they are all licensed as well. And so there is a lot of difficulties right now with keeping all of that current and moving. So in support of this, to allow us to, lots of companies have moved to remote working. However, some parents' flexibilities aren't that. And so when school was in session for 2 days a week or only 1 day a week, we were able to move that process through some emergency pieces, but those don't exist anymore. So this would allow us to continue that care a little bit easier and make it a little bit more affordable to the parents, as sometimes we have to pass that cost on because it does cost us a lot more to keep those licenses running.
So in closing, we are in support of this legislation and really appreciate the balance of ensuring the safety of children and the quality of our programming, but also making sure that we have accessible care that's affordable.
Vice Chair Bailey, you are recognized for an inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll bring my booster seat next time so I can see the folks. Hi. Just want to say, really just thank you. The YMCA has always been a fantastic service. I used to use it when my kids were little. Now they're old enough to stay home by themselves and not do dishes, but that's neither here nor there. But again, and I didn't know about the emergency. That's great. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. And Ms. Schultz, we miss you, and children and families. It's nice to see you. I miss seeing you all the time. But YMCA is very lucky to have you. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee for these witnesses? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else here in support? Seeing none, is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that will conclude, unless the sponsor has some closing comments.
I appreciate your time and I appreciate your ideas, and I would appreciate if you've got changes, you can get them to me this week so I can get them in the committee substitute, because there are some questions that I don't have the exact answer to and they need to be answered. And so any of those ideas I'd appreciate, and I want to make them before your next hearing so everybody has an opportunity to review them. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate your diligence on this. That will conclude the hearing on House Bill 1550. With that, we are going to ask Representative Shields to present to us House Bill 2151.
Okay, now I'll be official. I've just never testified in this room, and it is a little different. Anyway, good afternoon. I am Representative Brenda Shields. I represent District 11 in Northwest Missouri. Last year, the governor created the Office of Childhood. The reason the importance of creating the Office of Childhood is we manage child care in this state in 3 different departments. It was in the Department of DHSS, DSS, and DESE. When he created the Office of Childhood, he moved the work of DHSS, which dealt with licensure, and DSS, which dealt with subsidy, all into the Department of DESE. And really, this bill just allows what we're doing in this state, allows statute to mirror what we're doing in the state right now with the Department of Childhood. So all we've done is move statutes to the right location and the right statute. Haven't changed anything, haven't changed licensure, except for that it's happening in DSS or DESE. We haven't changed subsidy, except it's happening in DESE. There are 2 errors in the bill that you have in front of you. Is when you're moving this many statutes, things don't always go right, so I just want to point them out to you. The first one is on page 15, and it's in section 210.251 and line number 5. So you see right here, it moves something to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, and that actually needs to stay in the Department of DHSS. So nothing needs to change with that, and we're gonna make sure it goes back to the right place, or has it stay in the right place. Secondly, it's on page 20, and so we did some work. If you'll look at line 37, we added license exempt and unlicensed registered to line 38, which makes the entire paragraph 41 through 44 unnecessary. So we didn't clean that out when we made that change. We didn't clean out that below paragraph. Those are the 2 really cleanup changes that we need to make. I think out of a 25-page bill, when we moved all those statutes, to only find 2 that we didn't do quite right is actually, I'm fairly good. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions. If you have any questions about what the department is doing right now or the Office of Childhood, I do have the experts in the back behind me.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions from the committee for the bill sponsor? Representative Chipman,
To inquire.
you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this. I just want to, on the section that you just talked about on page 20, where you're going to eliminate the paragraph afterwards, you added it says license exempt, or unlicensed registered child care facility. What's the difference between a license exempt and an unlicensed registered?
Okay, so license, the experts are in the room. I think I have this right. So unlicensed registered allows you to collect subsidy, and it's one of the ways in which you can register your child care. And then the license exempt are what we give our religious organizations that run child cares. And I think I have that right. I'm going to look to see if I was shaking head.
Would that also include those facilities that have less than 6 children? Okay. Well,
Are you getting a shaking head?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll wait. I'll wait. Thank
I
you.
was going to say, we might be able to ask them here in just a second, so.
But I want you to be impressed I knew that, so.
Yeah, we are. Are there any other questions from the committee for bill sponsor? Seeing none, we will start with testimony in support of legislation. Once again, please state your name, witness form, all that good stuff.
Turn on the mic. Can you hear me? Hello. Morgan Atwood, Legal Counsel and Legislative Liaison for our newly established Office of Childhood. You guys are very far away, so I'll wave, but I don't need a booster, just so you guys know, on the record. We are very excited about the new office. We really appreciate Representative Shields' efforts to work with our office. We moved really quickly. We moved the best we could, and I'm certainly here to answer any questions you have.
I am going to recognize Representative Chipman to ask the same thing you just did, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So going back to my question on the license exempt. So this is somebody who has less than 6 children.
Yeah.
They're not licensed. And it just seems to me a little burdensome to that individual because they're unlicensed. They don't have to do everything that everybody else does, right? They can do things a little differently because they only have a few kids with them. To have them get a criminal background check on somebody that maybe just comes over to help them out once in a while, maybe doesn't get compensation for coming over, how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a law on the background checks that's 210-1080. If you are that small provider, maybe an ad hoc provider, maybe it's your neighbor's kids you're popping over to watch. So the only reason you would need a background check is if you are interested in being a provider for our subsidy program.
Okay.
So if that family qualifies through FSD to receive the child care benefit, then the provider would need to have that background check. That's something that the federal government requires of us to do in order to pay those funds.
So would that make them an unlicensed registered then?
It would.
So there really is a difference. So should the license exempt where that was added, should that be removed?
No, and here's why. Okay, so license exempt, for example, we've got churches. And so under 210-211, churches, religious organizations that provide childcare, those are exempt from licensure. But again, if they wanted to participate in that federal program for those subsidy dollars, they would need to come on board with us, receive a background check. And so that way we can pay them those federal funds.
So would that make them an unlicensed registered?
I wouldn't call them that because I like to put them in those distinct buckets. So the license exempt providers under 210-211 who want to have a contract with us for a service versus those non-licensed, they don't have to require a license but are registered with us.
Okay. Should that be differentiated here? So if someone was looking at this particular section, just to spell out that, the license exempt or the need for a background check in reference to the license exempt only applies to those religious organizations whereas the license exempt, who are just the small operators, they don't really need it? Or does that reference, should this reference it in that section? Yeah, please,
Yeah,
please.
come on down.
Excuse me. Yes, I will allow that, please.
So those terms are defined in another part of the legislation. So those are the terms that we have to use because they're defined, and they've been defined this way
Okay.
for years. So, I mean, if we want to change a definition to something different, I mean, you're going to be making lots of changes. So we didn't create a new definition just for this language.
Okay, I want to make sure that we're not back here next year fixing it because we've caused problems for the small-time operators, lumping them in with somebody who, you know, a religious organization who is really definitionally different. Because in my area, there's all kinds of these, the license exempt, the small providers.
We call, those are the ones that aren't reporting to DESI in any way, and they're just, and I mean, so what an unlicensed is defined, and that is, you know, wanting to receive subsidy, I can't remember the definition, I apologize.
Yeah, because I've been guilty of writing legislation that causes those problems later in the bill.
Me too.
Where they are, you know, antagonistic towards each other.
Yeah.
Because you have that. I just want to make sure that because that is a huge thing in my area, that we weren't causing them undue burden where somebody's gonna come at them and say, well, you're supposed to have criminal background checks because of this part. That's all I want to make sure of is if it's when, I mean, I read the definitions, but yeah, we read.
And I'll point out too, so Representative Shields identified that section that does need to be omitted. And so you can see the bold text of license exempt and unlicensed registered.
Right.
So that's actually in 2 here that is going to be deleted. So the practice of the law is not changing, but because 210-1080 originally contemplated 2 departments, so the license went over to health, the unlicensed, you know, went over to DSS. It was complicated, I know.
Right.
But this text actually doesn't change that practice other than now we're a one-stop shop.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I can certainly look at it.
And thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that line of questioning. We sure don't want to create any additional burden where it currently doesn't exist on accident. So thank you, Representative Chipman, for that. Do we have any further questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none, do we have anyone here in opposition? Anyone else in favor?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Garrett Webb, registered lobbyist on behalf of the Missouri chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and also testifying in support for Aligned. Both organizations are very happy to see all of our child care and childhood organizations come together in support of the Office of Childhood and making sure that we're treating our children and giving providers a one-stop shop to ensure their care is very high quality.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions on the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We'll continue with in favor.
Proud that we were able to accomplish, as other witnesses have said, dollars that we had on just such a honestly a dream come true for me to see this. My excitement about what is possible for Missouri children. To 10 years, we will see the results.
Thank you. I don't know if it was as obvious to others as it maybe was to me, but that is one of the priorities of this committee, and something that we definitely don't take lightly. But we look forward in moving the needle, for lack of a better term. So, are there any questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you. Is there anyone else here to testify in favor of the legislation? Is there anyone here for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that concludes our hearing on House Bill 2151. Oh,
I just want to make one more statement. That
please.
I just, and since we're talking about this office, you know, the federal government has sent us a lot of money for early childhood because it's really a workforce development issue. And I don't think that without the office that we would have been able to distribute these dollars to the right places for us to grow child care, to be able to develop, as I call them, more seats, as well as to help our families. And we continue to work through that. And if we hadn't created this office, I'm not sure if as a state we would have been successful, as at least as efficient as getting some of these dollars out. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. With that, that concludes the hearing on House Bill 2151, and it also concludes our hearing on Special Committee for Public Policy Day. Thank you, members, for being with us.